Hi, everybody. This is Erica from In the Company of Cards, and here is my guest, Anthony Perrotta. If you're new, you may not be familiar with Anthony. If you've been here a while, you remember when Anthony came by a few months ago, and just scroll back to find that video because we all love Anthony. Anthony's an astrologer, and I'm just so excited to have him here. That so excited to the point that today's Thursday. This was going to be a Sunday conversation. I was going to pretend it was Sunday, and then, but I'm going to air it today, which is Thursday. So
Mhm.
welcome, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. I had so much fun last time. Really excited to be here again and talk with you. I always admire you and I admire Nancy so much. So,
Well, it's mutual. It's mutual.
so I think, we were chatting right before you hit record, and we were sort of talking about the energy of right now,
Mm,
right? And like what's going on in the cultural zeitgeist and how astrology is kind of playing into the energetics.
mm,
Something I really want to call attention to is eclipse season,
mm,
right? And, I always like to start and preface the idea of eclipses as letting people know that eclipses are potent portals and doorways of change. Okay.
Now,
Things
what are
move
they?
very,
What are they literally? Like what?
yeah.
Literally?
Yeah. So literally, eclipses occur in the signs that the North and South node happen to be in. So currently, right now in the sky, we have the North node in Pisces and the South node in Virgo.
Okay.
So that means that the seasons of those signs will likely be eclipse season, right? So that would be this past March, Pisces season was eclipse season. When we entered Virgo season this year, it became eclipse season again. And then the eclipses are the lunations, so the new and full moons that fall in those same signs as the nodes. So, for example, we just had an eclipse on September 7th in the sign of Pisces,
Mhm.
right? So, when we think about ecliptic energy, there's a lot that is spoken about, I think, in the magical tarot astrology community where eclipses get demonized. Okay. And although they can be chaotic, and as we're seeing, and although they can be swirling, they are, like I was saying, incredible portals of change and they move things at warp speed.
Mm,
So, usually, eclipse season is like a time when we're pressing fast. We're not even pressing play. We're pressing fast forward.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
And we sort of feel like we're racing. And that's because eclipses, especially lunar eclipses, so like a full moon during eclipse season, are unbelievably illuminating, right? Because the sun and moon opposed, right? They're shining a light on each other. And then the earth kind of stands between. That's what becomes the eclipse, right? That's literally the visual eclipse that we have. So what ends up happening is, let's take this Pisces eclipse, for example, there was an illumination of information.
mhm,
Okay. So Virgo really dealing with like the details in information, synthesis, process, labor. Um, and then Pisces really dealing with like compassion and spirituality and surrender and endings. And so we get a major illumination around an ending that could occur in our lives right now or coming up in the next few months because the energy of the eclipses start during eclipse season, but then they sort of, like I said, bring us into warp speed sort of through like the next couple of months as we're trying to work through whatever the eclipses brought up.
So
Does that make
this is
sense?
in our individual lives, but also in the mundane, meaning in the
Yes.
as well.
Yes, it's very much so in the collective. Eclipses in the collective energy um, are very powerful because eclipses, I'll put it this way, it was during the last Virgo Pisces eclipses of 2015, okay, when we started to see the shift in favor towards Donald Trump becoming elected,
Oh,
right?
okay. So
Think
it's a
about
big
the
thing.
Yeah, so think about like the emails with Hillary Clinton started to like come to light in like September, October, right before the election.
Hmm.
We can thank Comey for that one.
Yes.
Ugh,
Hmm.
I know. But then, I think some people who were predicting whether they wanted it or not for Donald Trump to win again this time were because the eclipses were back in the same signs that they were the last time
Right.
he won. And again, it happened where September and October of last year happened to be a turning point month again for kind of what was going on. And I think, you know, I have my opinions. I think Kamala was brought in too late. She
Yeah.
wasn't set up for success,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But so then again, now we're dealing with his presidency for the second time is baked into the eclipse energy. So it is chaotic, right? It is unclear, but
Mhm.
also very clear if you're looking at it, right? Because that's the thing about the eclipse is that things get eclipsed out of our view and then totally brought to our full awareness because we're sort
It's
of.
funny that you said that because, I was a little late for our encounter here because I was
Mhm,
writing my Substack. And one of the things that I was talking about, well, the cards that had come up were the Eight of Swords, was the
mhm,
tarot card. And I was in the process of talking about um, cultivated cluelessness. In other words,
mm,
it's literally what you said, where the evidence is in our faces, and yet
mhm.
we're going, I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't move. That we cultivate that to our
It's true.
own detriment.
It's true. It's interesting. The Eight of Swords has a relationship to astrologically the sign of Gemini.
Mhm.
And so I sometimes view that card as like falsehoods
Yeah,
or the inability to see something, the
yeah,
duplicitousness that can kind of occur, blindfolds, exactly what you were saying. And then, you think about Trump, who's a Gemini,
right,
and it starts to make you think a little bit. And I'm not demonizing Geminis because I love them as a
right.
side note. But in this case, like the energy of that Eight of Swords feels very current
Yes,
based on what's going on politically and culturally here in the United States and this sort of duplicitous energy that is being brought forward through Donald Trump being able to give, let's say, Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom humorous, post humorously. However, that same thing not being granted to the actual politicians who were murdered back in June.
right, right.
So,
Well, and also, you mentioned an eclipse have being information coming forward. So
yeah.
not all this Epstein stuff coming forward, and
Hmm.
distractions that are happening to make us not pay attention to that, or to try
Yes.
to not pay attention.
No, and it's true. So something that's kind of going on right now is the South Node, which is a point of release in astrology. The Mercury, the planet of communication, and the Sun, which is this obviously the celestial body of like illumination and being, they're all together.
Mhm.
So this is a major release point in our collective culture. But on top of this, Virgo deals with the details. So it's almost like there are too like the downside to that is that there's too many details coming at us that it's hard to even know where to direct or place our energy right now.
Interesting, interesting, right?
And if we think about Virgo, because it's so like in and it's so minuscule and minute, which can be good, we're missing something
Picture,
in the big picture,
yeah.
which the North Node in Pisces currently and this recent eclipse in
Mhm.
Pisces should have started to highlight something that we are collectively in the mundane missing in the big picture overall.
And I mean with North and South nodes, and I don't know anything about it, but
No, it's okay.
the North node is what we should be aiming towards, right?
Yes, I call it a point of hunger, you
Uh,
know?
yeah, I like that.
Because I think I'm always in the camp of the nodes should be a place of balance. We can't go too far from the south node because there's gifts there, and we can't go too far into the north node because then we become insatiable
Mhm.
or greedy. So
Interesting.
you kind of yeah you so you kind of need this balance between the energies. So I find that. the gifts of the South Node right now is sort of discriminating, right? It's giving us judgment.
Hmm.
That's an energy that we can really carry forward with Virgo. Is like, okay, we need to be more judgmental of the
Discerning.
things,
Yeah.
yes, discerning of the things that are coming forward, which also feels sort of like Eight of Swords in a way,
Yeah.
right? This like alternative energy. And the North Node in Pisces is granting us like the faith or the trust or the belief that what we're discerning is true, trusting the intuition.
Mm.
But the dark side of that is then delusion. If
Yeah.
we're pulling ourselves too far away from the critical thinking,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yes, it totally makes sense.
So, historically, eclipses have been seen by our ancestors as a negative thing. They sometimes call it like malefic or baneful. And part of this has to do with the fact that if you think about it, they couldn't explain why, right? Like the sky would go dark in the middle of the day, or why the moon looked blood red at night for any reason. And it was terrifying for
Hmm.
them.
Right.
Everything went eerily calm, right? Animals would freak out, and they saw it as like these major bad omens, like bad things were coming. Well, we know now
Hmm.
that we can scientifically explain why it happens. So my take is that they're not so baneful
Hmm.
as much as they are sort of like that chaotic neutral, where it's going to take a stab at anything that sort of needs our attention. So eclipses really draw us to this needs our attention right now.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
I mean,
So
there's so much that needs our attention right now.
it's true. The energy of this eclipse season to me has felt really marked by, so we started the season with a new moon in Virgo, okay, on like the 23rd of August or so. And although that was not an eclipse, it was in a square to Uranus,
Hmm.
sort of kicking and swirling things up. So
Hmm.
it was already like the storm before the storm, essentially. You could think of it as like multiple hurricane seasons or multiple hurricanes within a season. So we started there around the 23rd. I feel like that was around the time that Epstein files were like really like, we had a lot of conversations coming up with the Epstein files. We had a lot of people starting to flip their thought processes. We have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I do not agree with, suddenly starting to like shift her perspective and her stance on certain things like the genocide in Gaza, or wanting the Epstein files released.
Hmm.
And then that sort of started to carry us. So then we saw the week after that is when we had a lot of the hearings,
Hmm.
right? And, when people were like, don't stop talking about it, don't stop talking about it. And then it sort of started to culminate around the 7th when we had a lot of the victims come forward and start like being interviewed right before then, right? And we had politicians sitting in, leaving like Nancy Mace, leaving the room crying, right? Still duplicitous, acting on the behalf of Trump and still voting against the interests of the people who are being actively harmed, because classic. But still, it's becoming like this big bubble right now in American culture that we're ready for it to
Well,
burst.
yeah. So now you have Chuck Schumer in the Senate trying to push the same kind of resolution that they have,
Mhm.
that they're trying to push in the House. So it felt to
Mhm.
me very much like a squeeze play. It didn't work, of course,
Yeah.
because they voted against it. But two really important Republican senators, and one is Rand Paul, the other one might have been Thune, voted for it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, so it is this bubble, like you say, getting sort of bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then on an international scale,
Yes.
there's so much, but one of the things is that we've got Russia attacking Poland so that NATO has to now
Mhm.
respond. And the danger of that is that that takes the attention away from Ukraine, which of course is not yet in NATO,
Mhm.
which means that Russia can do whatever they want to do, but
Mhm.
because all of the defense of Ukraine is now turned towards Poland and Eastern Europe. So like you say, there's a lot of duplicity going on.
Mhm.
even as these things grow and expand and puff up.
So this makes me think about when I was on here last time, we talked a lot about astrology and world politics,
Mhm,
right? And one of it, well, I focus a lot on the US, but we touched on world politics, and it makes me think a little bit about how Uranus and Gemini historically has, and Pluto and Aquarius have both dealt with widespread, and I'm going to use this conflict,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And I'm not saying this to scare anyone, but more being aware because Gemini, again, Uranus and Gemini bringing like so much information at us, we're not sure where to look, what to
Right.
do, and that's the point,
It's the
right?
point.
Is it's the point. It's to keep us scattered. And that is what ends up creating conflicts and pockets of different areas of the world. On top of this, the Pluto and Aquarius piece is the power to the people. So what ends up happening is that if people feel disenfranchised in any capacity or any way, they're going to reclaim their power in any way possible. We think about Pluto and Aquarius was sort of the other side of the American Revolution,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
It was also the other side of the Haitian Revolution.
mhm.
It was also the other side of the French Revolution. What just happened in France,
The
right?
government fell, yeah.
Right. So this is kind of powers or that once felt like large powers are going to start to have their own renaissance
Mhm.
or rebirths or maybe destructions into rebirths kind of happening at the same time. I was just about to pull the chart for Nepal because I was very curious because they also, right around the eclipse, right, have had a big major political revolution going on with the young people, power back to the people, right? They're literally burning I believe it's the one of the governmental buildings and some of
Oh,
the buildings of the government owners there in Nepal too. I don't know if you've been following that at
no, I
all.
hadn't followed it. I have to look. But you know, the thing about revolution, I mean, it all sounds I mean, I've talked a lot and made a lot of reference to the revolution, the French Revolution and the storming of the
Hmm.
Bastille. And I've said people will be surprised who's standing to the right and left of them,
Hmm.
the storming of the Bastille. It could be, some corporate head that is losing money because of the tariffs, right? Or it could be a disenfranchised Trumper who, can't pay for what his kids
Yes.
back to school clothes. So that will be surprising. The thing that I'm concerned, well, I mean, I'm concerned about a lot of things, but just in the moment is that revolution doesn't just, it's not like a tide that washes in because there's always an equal and opposite reaction against it.
Hmm.
And you've got
Hmm.
this Charlie Kirk thing. Now, look, any man's death diminishes me. I am involved in mankind. Therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. So that's what I have to say about that. But he was not a good guy. Uh,
Hmm.
and died by his own philosophy.
Words.
Maybe. I mean, if you think
Hmm.
about it. But anyway, uh, I know that he is being lionized and championed as this hero with the flags at half staff, for God's sake.
Hmm.
Um, but further than that, blame is being ascribed for his murder and be
Hmm.
given to the left. We, meanwhile,
Hmm.
have no idea who did it. They had
Yeah.
three guys that they ultimately had to let them both go. We don't know. There's a photograph apparently circulating of a young white guy. He's got a baseball cap and sunglasses. But at any rate, we don't know. But it's an opportune moment. It's an opportunity for for
Hmm.
for the felon to say, yeah, and this is why I am pulling in the National Guard, the
Hmm.
military, and everybody else. I mean, that's what I worry about is that
Yeah.
we use it as a pretext
So,
to respond to revolution.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that could be a reality, right? And again, not even because of the astrology, just because of where we are in
Right.
our political climate, right? It is very much so a reality. With the South Node in Virgo, we're really combating this understanding or this relationship to control. And because of Virgo, right? We think about there can be in the energy of Virgo, not the people of Virgo necessarily, this rigidity or
Mm,
this sense of control or iron grip or not wanting to let go of things.
mm,
And Pisces is about a surrender,
mm,
sometimes about a sacrifice.
mm.
And so
Oh,
what's interesting is that we have a sacrifice that's going to portend control, right? That's going to bring control forward. So then the question is how do you become free? Right? Where is the liberation in someone trying to force control on to its people, right? And
well, yeah.
you
So,
know,
so it seems like, okay, because one of the theories that I heard, and this was a little freaky. I saw a video this morning, and it was of the event yesterday. And
mhm,
there was a guy in the line of the bullet, a line of the stage, I guess, where Charlie Kirk was. But he was making baseball signs, whatever, baseball little.
mhm,
And somebody said the person who put the video up said they weren't convinced that, and I don't know. I This is speculation because it's all speculation, that Charlie Kirk was sacrificed by
mhm,
MAGA to distract from the Epstein thing, that he was, they created this whole thing, which is why they couldn't
mhm.
find him right, or what the guy fight right. Yeah.
So this is where we have to be careful. This is where the critical piece of Virgo
Yeah.
comes in, right? Because we have to be careful of falling into the same conspiracy theories that MAGA has. And I'm not saying that maybe they're incorrect, but it's still
This
this
is the danger.
idea.
Hmm.
This is the danger. This is the delusion, right? When we're too hungry for an answer for
Yeah.
a why, the Virgo Pisces axis, right? We're too hungry to understand Virgo, so we're going to look for things that maybe aren't 100% there.
Okay, so maybe a better surface analysis would be, maybe that's true, maybe that's not true, but the fact of the matter that is true
He
is that
was
he was killed,
martyred.
and he is being considered as a martyr. However,
Yes.
whatever the origin of that.
And that is Pisces as well. So the archetype of Pisces is Jesus Christ,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Right. And then the archetype of Virgo is Mary in Christianity, right? There are archetypes in every form of religion. There are archetypes in every mythology. They all exist because they're all myths, right? At the end of the day, they're all myths. And the idea there then is that there is a martyr, right? And both Virgo and Pisces, both Mary and Jesus, were martyrs in their own right, right? Mary, if you think about it, had to surrender or sacrifice
Fun.
yes, her son, and also her body to
Hmm.
give birth
Yeah,
to
well,
the
yeah,
The
13.
Son of
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
right? And her adolescence and her childhood and all these things, right? But then, of course, like patronized and then like deified as a result. And then obviously Jesus
Yeah,
martyred,
yeah,
period. Like
yeah.
that's exactly what that was about. And it's interesting that in this country, that Christian nationalism is utilizing them, specifically Jesus, as this archetype of whom they're trying to champion when it's actually a delusion, North Node and Pisces. They've gone too far, right? Because they've actually forgotten the scripture
Hmm.
and the teachings of their God,
Hmm.
essentially,
Hmm.
right? Or their Messiah.
Well, and then if you look at the Virgo piece of it,
Hmm.
uh, you know, uh, Charlie Kirk was none too complimentary to women, we'll just say, and that whole
Mm-mm.
movement is oppressive in
Hmm.
its speech
So
about women.
it is. And if you think about that axis that shows up in Christianity very clearly. So Christianity came up it was in the age of Pisces that Christianity was birthed, literally, right? So it's
The
very
age
clear.
martyr.
Yeah, the age of the martyr. And so that lasts about 2000 to 2500 years is like an era or an age. So we're coming to the end. We're kind of like in this cross quarter of, or this cross section of the age of Pisces ending and the age of Aquarius beginning, because the ages go backward, not forward, right? So when we talk about this, then we have to understand that there's a shadow side to each age. That shadow side is the polarity. So in this case, it's Virgo for the age of Pisces, and that's where we kind of get this Christianity like it's supposed to be love your neighbor, love all are welcome, but it's really rigid and there are rules and there are things that like you have to abide by. And, there are many retellings of this book or this scripture or this thought or
Right.
this idea. It becomes more discriminating, it becomes more othering instead of actually the compassionate, open nature that Christianity was supposed to be built on, right? So as we're entering in, I know I'm jumping around a bit, but it really plays into this. As we're entering in this age of Aquarius time frame, right? Then that is Aquarius is very much so about the people. It's very much so about the community and the collective. Maybe the shadow side to that is conspiracy theories, it's innovation and technology, but we can also see where the dark side of that comes in with things like
Yeah.
AI. But then the shadow side to Aquarius or the polarity to Aquarius is Leo. So where we have like this concept of utopia with Aquarius, we have dogmaticism and authoritarianism with Leo, the very me, fascism. We have fascism, right? And so this is not unique to history, but to where we are right now, we're seeing these sort of overarching concepts collide at the same time. And what's also interesting about this is that right now we have the eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. In 2026, we are going to begin the eclipses in Aquarius and Leo.
Oh,
Yes.
oh,
And yes. And so it's what's really fascinating is that Trump's presidency in terms of the signs that the eclipses are in are going to be the same, basically. So he was elected under Pisces Virgo eclipses. At that time, the North Node was in Virgo, not the South Node. So it's inverted.
right.
And then through the like 2017 time frame, right, was the Leo Aquarius, but the North Node was in Leo. This time the North Node will be
Oh,
in Aquarius, so it'll be inverted.
yep.
And then it was the North Node in Cancer towards the end, because like that was more like the 2020 time frame, 2019, 2020. And then by the 2028 period, we'll have the North Node instead in Capricorn, which is the polarity of Cancer. So those are called nodal oppositions, and those are pivots and turning points within sort of the collective. Also, it can be in our personal lives. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in his particular presidency that takes a pivot or a turning point, maybe a not completion, maybe a rewriting it could go either way because, we don't truly have a crystal ball.
Now, wait, this is in 2026?
So it's all now. So
Oh,
like
now I was going to
basically,
say, okay.
it's
All right.
from now through 2028 in his 4-year term, essentially.
So anything can happen.
Because we're the purpose of a nodal opposition in general is to pivot, change course, and to reimagine. And if we look back at the first presidency he had, right, he's actually deepening his commitments to the things that he wanted to do, which is weird because he's not really a committed person. But the resistance to that is actually, I'm going to say, stronger
Also
from the
stronger.
people.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. So then there's that pivoting and that reimagining, and people are starting to realize I can call back my power. I am not as disenfranchised. And it's going to take a little while. We talked about this in the last episode too. As people wake up,
Yeah.
right? We have to be like, all right, come on, let's go. We're all in it together now,
Mhm.
you know? Because and it's happening. So the other thing, Virgo is an earth sign that has a strong connection to the land.
Mhm.
What's happening in the agricultural industry right now, right?
Yeah. They're hurting. They're
They
really.
are.
Mhm.
They're really hurting. And food is becoming more expensive.
Yep.
Virgo has a connection to diet, has a
Yep.
connection to food.
Yep.
Food is becoming more expensive. And then we are also, because of the tariffs, right? These rules, these regulations, very Virgo, we're having less access to certain foods. And then also, if we think about MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again, we
Yeah.
are also, I know, but we are also utilizing health and wellness as a delusion or kind of a pseudoscience, which can feel like the hunger of Pisces going too far in that direction, right? Where we begin to spread misinformation or get foggy or nebulous. And so then all of these other things are happening in the healthcare industry. So Virgo really deals with the healthcare industry and labor. One of the things that I sort of anticipated during this eclipse cycle, which will end, I believe, at the end of 2026. I think there's one more eclipse in the fall of 2026 in relation to this. But what I sort of anticipated was a major reform to the healthcare industry and labor rights and labor movements really growing and changing and shifting course during this time too, because of Virgo's relationship to labor in particular.
Well, that's good.
The other thing I want to bring up as a side note to the Charlie Kirk situation is uh, the talk around the Etsy witch,
Hmm.
right? And I'm just going to touch on this solely. It's the fact that with the North Node in Pisces, Pisces, because it's sacrifice, because it's martyr, because it's spirituality,
Right.
right?
Oh, yeah.
It absolved from religion, right? Pisces is spirituality absolved from religion. This is going to bring up something around spiritual communities, right? Like where there are going to be a lot of conversations, like what are the right and wrong things to do, whatever. But also, not going to say a witch hunt, but I will say that people might become more careful about sharing their own magical practices for a little bit under this during this time.
That's very interesting. And we've kind of known that was coming for a while. So it makes
Hmm.
sense that you're sort of pinpointing it as, now's the time.
Well, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the Salem witch trials, for however you feel about them, I want to say that they happened during a Uranus and Gemini transit, which we are in currently. So during the years of, I'm
92,
looking it
I
up
know,
right in there.
trials.
Um, Say again.
1692.
1692.
Hmm.
For some reason, I thought it was earlier than 1692. We're going to look that up because I'm pretty sure that that was a Uranus and Gemini transit. And it was. So, which is misinformation, right? It's the demonization of people through misinformation.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether it's a witch hunt or not, it's the same thing again. Same idea.
That is really
Mhm.
interesting. All right, I'm writing that down.
So, so what I would, we the thing about eclipses is it brings up something in the collective conscious. It brings up in our own personal consciousness as well. So we are really forced to look at things a little bit differently. And it's meant to bring greater clarity and greater redirection. Sometimes things get eclipsed out,
Mhm.
as we're seeing, and sometimes things are like rushed in. And the thing that we will find is that the more resistance that we have to change, especially during eclipse season, the harder it's going to be for everyone, right? So there's going to be more angst, more energy, more chaos. But the reality is that Pisces and Virgo are both mutable signs. So it's really about fluidity and flexibility. How can we become more flexible to the times and work with what's available to us, the electricity, and move things forward in the direction that we collectively believe or have faith in as people overall? As much as there might be um, as much as there might be more rules, regulations, whatever coming up as a result of this from the right,
Yeah.
from everyone else, I think there will be a just as strong counter resistance to that
But
too.
but you're saying that the counter resistance can't be fire with fire. But it's got to be like if this is the fire, you got to find a way around it and under it and
We're going to do everything. I think that's really what it's going to come down to is that a resistance to be in resistance to whatever this is. In some cases, we may have to do fire with fire, right? Not always, because that can be really harmful, but there can be creative ways of dealing and bringing with like connecting with community, talking to people on the one-on-one, helping them shift their perspective or welcoming people in as they shift their perspective. That's part of the counter resistance, right?
well, so you
It's
use the word resistance in that, and then you're describing it, and it's making me think once again of the French resistance. Everything wasn't all fisticuffs in your face. There was a lot
Mhm.
of backstage maneuvering that was done.
There was, and yes, there were sacrifices, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
When we think about the French Revolution, yes, we did have monarchs fall. We had kings and queens fall. Same thing though, if you think about like in the US during the same time, we had royalty fall because we became independent. We colonized, but still, we became independent from British rule.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, anything that is perceived as monarch-like is also going to shift and change. It's really interesting to even bring up that point because in the British monarchy, in the royal monarchy in England, a lot of the people born in that family have eclipse birthdays or are really close to times of eclipses. And then they also have very significant events happen in their life around eclipses too.
Wow.
So, like, it'll be really interesting to see, we're so focused on the US and maybe things that are going on in France or wherever else that, like Nepal is having its own thing. It'll be really interesting to see what happens to King Charles also.
I heard that he and Harry had tea or something yesterday, and
Hmm.
and I'm sure that part of the conversation is in what capacity could Harry possibly come back? And of course, there's a lot
Hmm.
of suspicion of him because of the book
Hmm.
having left and Meghan.
Hmm.
Um, I also heard that Catherine is having
Yep.
tea with Melania this week
Oh.
because they want to have a better relationship, closer relationship with the Trump administration. Very interesting.
Mm. That is very interesting, disappointing, and interesting.
Well,
But
the other thing is this Epstein thing. Like, I never want us
mhm.
to lose sight of Epstein. And
Mm-mm.
he has international ramifications, not the
Hmm.
least of which is for the British royal family.
Hmm. It's true.
Let me ask you this. Do you see, because I get asked this once in a while, do you see in the next little while more of a move towards, because we're talking about revolution and,
Hmm.
but do you see any possibility of a splitting of the country, like a
I,
civil?
yeah, it's interesting because we are dealing with some astrology that's very similar to the time of the Civil War right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Honestly, we are. Um, is it possible? Sure. Have I dreamed of it? Kind of.
Mhm.
Not that I want people to be separated from their loved ones or separated from each other, but is it too hard to manage the expectations of millions and millions and millions and millions of people as one entity? Yeah, I think so. I
Mhm.
think it is. And I think that also kind of speaks to the Pisces Virgo, where is
Yeah.
it better to go with digestive pieces, small segments, instead of looking at the thing as a whole picture? What's the right thing? What's the wrong thing? I don't know what answer is correct or incorrect, but is it a possibility? Yeah, kind of with the current astrology.
Mhm.
I believe during the Civil War, we had, I think also we had Neptune and Aries, I believe, during that time. And I want to say we also had Uranus and Gemini once again. I'm going to double check that. But I love the computer because I can look at anything so quickly. Natal chart. Because again, it's that same astrological energy. Yep, Uranus was in Gemini. So, and Gemini also being not just duplicitousness, but also division, right? Because it's the twins.
Mhm.
And having that connection to Mercury, which deals with communication and thoughts and information. So, and we are still fighting the same fight that we did because the ruse of the Civil War was slavery,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It wasn't the reality of why the Civil War came to be,
Mhm.
right? And that's why we are still dealing with all of the issues because we never met it at its systemic problem. We
No,
just put a
because Lincoln, I mean, good guy, tried hard, was a visionary, but his thing was let him up easy, let the South up easy. And
mhm,
so the South has never, I mean, they've never actually acknowledged that they lost the war.
mhm, mhm. And that's the thing. Again, so now we're Pisces Virgo, we're being brought up against the delusions versus the reality,
Hmm.
the rigidity versus the fluidity,
Hmm.
right? And we're trying to navigate, and that's why this time feels unbelievably chaotic. We have another eclipse on September 21st,
Hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
And so this eclipse will spark sort of the end of eclipse season. It doesn't mean that all of this energy goes away. It just means the portal that we're in, this sort of like heaviness, the tension will start to release. But that particular eclipse that is a more difficult eclipse, to be honest.
Okay, put that on your calendars, everybody. September
Yeah.
20th. Ooh, September. What
And
kind of, this is a crazy month. Oh,
I know. And it's because we have the sun and moon in will join together in its solar eclipse, will oppose almost exactly Saturn, which is this planet of discipline,
yeah, the
obstacle,
taskmaster.
and severance. Yes, it is the taskmaster. Exactly. So we are going to, and Saturn can restrict, confine, and like break down, but it also reforms. It gives you a gift
Uh-huh.
through the hard work. So whatever's going on right now, there's a lot of breaking down that we're not even privy to, or that we are going to end up being a part of in the coming months, potentially year
Mhm.
or so, right? So the other part of this is that Neptune, which is that planet of illusion, is opposite this eclipse as well. So as we're reforming and breaking things down, there's still no answers. There's still no clarity. We're still uncertain as to why, like what's going on, why are they making these decisions? And it's going to take us kind of moving more into October
Uh-huh.
where we start to get
Some clarity.
information.
Uh-huh.
Yes, exactly. Even the week leading up to that eclipse on the 21st, it's gonna be a little hard. Responsibility is like we have a responsibility as people to really think critically during that time.
Hmm.
And part of that has to do with literally Saturn ruling responsibility as an energy.
Hmm.
And maybe we need to figure out like where we can't escape into things to avoid what needs our attention at that time. That's part of our responsibility is not being able to evade or escape. We kind of have to look at things exactly as they are in the moment, knowing that they're going to continue to clarify.
I'm glad you said that because I often will have viewers say, "Oh, I'm so sick of this. I want it to be over. I just want to escape. I just want to play with baby goats in pajamas."
Me
But
too.
you said, we all do, right? But the very last thing you said just now, I think is really important, which is we have to stay the course, keep putting one foot in front of the other because we are walking towards clarification.
Yeah, we are. I mean, you have to think the positive of the Pisces Virgo, because I spend a lot of time kind of criticizing it, right? The positives of the Pisces Virgo axis is the ability to dream and then make this tangible plan based on the dreams. Okay.
Yeah, every thought, everything starts with a thought.
It does. It does. And so when we consider that Pisces is very much so hope, right? It's like what is the thing that we can put our faith into? Well, faith also requires tangible action. That's where Virgo comes in.
Yep.
It's like, hey, you have this vision, you're envisioning this thing. Great. How can we get you there? What plans? What's the steps? What are the things we can do? Because here's the reality, dreams require hard work,
Yep.
and people don't like to hear that. I don't
Nope.
want to hear it.
Right.
I want it to be easy. I
Right.
want things to be easy, and they can be. But in order to make them easy, we have to put in effort, at least in the beginning, to know that we are moving in that right or correct direction.
The quote I love is we have to do what we have, what we do what we have to do so we can do what we want to do.
Yes, I grew up with the saying "pay now, play later," or "play
Yeah.
now and pay later,"
Yeah.
and it kind of it's funny because I really objected to that growing up as
Of
a kid.
course. Of
I
course.
was like, oh, that's
Nobody wants to
terrible.
hear that. Yeah.
But and this is very Saturnian because Saturn really deals with maturation as I've gotten older. I've been like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, I can see it collectively and I can see it individually. The
Right.
more that, I do some things up front, the easier things end up becoming in the long run. And, Virgo is about efficiency. It
Yep.
does want to make our life easier,
Yep.
right? And Pisces really wants us to enjoy and find pleasure in things. So it's not to say that in our acts of resistance that we can't still enjoy things. When I talk
Mhm.
about evasion, it doesn't mean, well, you have to have your nose to the grindstone the whole time and that you constantly need to be doing things and exhausting yourself. No, you have to know your limits.
Right.
But also you have to replenish yourself. That's
Right.
also what Pisces is an invitation to. What brings your soul, Pisces, joy and creativity and happiness. So there is sort of, again, this counterbalance between the energies. You can't go too far into one or too far in the other because we're seeing what's happening in the culture when we're pulled to the extremes.
Yep. Yep.
So the so when we're kind of moving through the eclipse season, sometimes it's better to let the chips fall where they may in
Hmm.
the moment,
Hmm.
right? If you practice magic, I always view you doing any sort of intention or magic work during eclipse season like storm
Hmm.
magic.
Hmm.
So, because it just has that element of unpredictability to
Well,
it.
that's
I
why
won't,
they say things like, I've heard you're not supposed to charge crystals under an eclipse.
right. So, and that all deals with its unpredictable nature.
Yeah.
I'm always in the camp of do what's best for you and your practice,
Hmm.
right? You'll have some astrologers on the opposite end go, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. You'll have astrologers on another end that are like, don't even go outside
Hmm.
under the baneful rays of the
Yeah, but
eclipse. Stay inside. Yeah. And
yeah.
then on the other side, you have the other ones who are like chaos agents who are like, yeah, you want to make a big change? Dive in, go for it. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of in the camp of, well, in your personal practice, make a decision on just knowing that the energy will be unpredictable,
Hmm.
what's going to sort of show up for you. I think about some of the times that I've done some work around eclipses and I've eclipsed things out of my life that at the time I was really upset about
Hmm.
and I was really angry that they left. But in hindsight, as I got more clarity, as eclipses provide over time, I was like, oh, actually, that totally redirected me in a much better place than I was in that where I was going at that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the thing to note is we have this eclipse on the 21st coming up, so things are going to continue to feel charged. On the 13th, that is Saturday, I think, we will have something called a Mercury cazimi. This is when the sun and Mercury meet. This happens several
That's a
times a
good,
year.
that's good, right? Because
It is good. It is good. I
okay.
always jokingly call it a spell. But the purpose of a cazimi is any planet that passes through the sun, it will form a cazimi as long as it's at the exact degree. So, and cazimi, for those that don't know, in Arabic literally translates to in the heart of the sun. So any planet, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all of them can have cazimis.
Well, wait a minute. So if Mercury is passing through, doesn't that mean we'll get some clarity in terms of the things that get communicated to us and information?
Yes, 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 yes,
Okay, good.
yes, Erica. So that's the best part. I'm like, that's the best part is we are going to get to this Kazemi coming up this weekend, maybe just after it, maybe right before it. We're going to start to get some answers to things that feel like we have lacked answers to
Okay.
already.
And that's the 13th.
Mm, it
Okay.
is. And the Kazemi is also a point of rebirth for that planet. It gets cleansed, new ideas form. It is innovative, right? It can also scorch because of the sun. It can burn down anything else that sort of arises. So just knowing that's why it's a point of clarification, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like this trial by fire where, boom, of course we're going to clarify. We're going to clarify with fire. Now, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. So it is the ruler of this season. And with that being said, then we understand that this Mercury Cazimi in particular is going to feel that much more important because it's going to clarify for us what might,
Details.
yes, the details, and what we might have our eyes focused on around the eclipse on the 21st too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right.
Because so,
Well,
I
that's
said
good.
to you
So it's
before,
like a little heads up about the 21st.
it is. And it'll be interesting, like maybe something with Epstein might come up during that time. Could be something around Charlie Kirk. Could
Hmm.
be something around like a lot of. I think there might be a lot of push. I think correct. So there will be a lot of, or I guess positively so, um, a lot of push towards more gun reform.
Hmm.
Now, if that actually happens, who knows? But
No.
I think a lot of people are going to become even more vocal around gun reform, and maybe even unlikely people
Hmm.
are going to become more vocal about it because now their life or livelihood has been impacted. Their idols. That's the other thing about the false idols, right? This is very Pisces, where we're idolizing people who maybe have failures and follies and we're not willing to see them. The gift of Virgo is the ability to see the failure in
Yeah.
somebody, right? It's to go, okay, well, you're not perfect. I want you to be perfect,
Hmm.
right? But Pisces is the illusion of perfection too. That's kind of their axis there. And we're maybe glazing over the details, which is why I think this Kazemi might be helpful
Very
in
interesting.
clarifying some of those glazing over moments.
That's very helpful and very encouraging.
Yes. Well, that energy, I always say it's not just eclipse seasons. There are what I call sort of the halfway points between the seasons
Hmm.
that also bring kind of like those mini bursts.
Hmm.
So June was that halfway point
Is there a
between
name
eclipse
for
season.
that?
I don't know actually. That's a good question. I don't know. I just sort of I'm like, oh, we're at the halfway point between the eclipses. So like June would have been that month basically, or Gemini season would have been that time frame because it's a sign, a mutable sign that squares or sort of is in between Pisces and Virgo.
Right.
Okay. So obviously Melissa Hoffman was killed, that we had a gun violence thing happen in June,
Yep.
right? Sagittarius is the other sort of cross season that might bring something up if we think back to December of 2024. That was Luigi Mangione, right?
Hmm.
So, then my eyes would be on December of 2025
Ooh, yeah.
or Sagittarius season, which sort of starts at the end of November into early December. What might arise during those time frames?
Because that's the in-between
Yeah,
time.
exactly. So there'll be like little bursts, like a mini burst.
Right.
And right before then, we're in a Mercury retrograde
Hmm.
in the sign of, partly in the sign of Sagittarius, or I think maybe whole totality in the sign of Sagittarius. So we're going to be going back to things that we're talking about right now
So
in November.
they will be revisited. Mm,
Yes, they will. In the month of November, they will be revisited.
really
Mhm.
interested. All right.
I want to say too, like through these eclipses, I don't want you all to be afraid. I don't want anyone to be afraid because they can be really exciting times of change. It's just that if we are resistant to change, that's when it becomes difficult, right? That's when it becomes, even in our personal lives, that's when it becomes difficult. If we know that the energy is potent and that we can't predict, but we can prepare, right? So what will ground you? This is a good time to like look at grounding practices for yourself.
Okay.
This is a good time to reach out to your community. This is a good time to check in with your body. How is my body feeling? Right? I just did a video on an eclipse check-in, and I was telling people
I
to move your
saw that
wiggle your
on
yes,
Instagram. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, yeah, wiggle your fingers and toes. Like do a check-in. A gift of Pisces and Virgo is embodiment,
Right.
right? So the gift is to really ask yourself, like, ooh, where are things settling in my body? Is it like why does my shoulder hurt right now? Or, I think I slept wrong, so I have like a little crick in my neck. Why is that there? How can I like focus on that? The other through line between both of these is healing. They're both healers, Virgo and Pisces. So
Hmm.
we really have to ask ourselves, like, well, what currently needs attention or healing in my life, in the community, and in the collective, and maybe put some of our energy into that instead of the fret, the worry, the uncertainty. Because as much as I talk about eclipses being these incredible moments of chaos and change, we've lived through at least two eclipse seasons every single year of our lives. We
Right.
have them. We get minimum four eclipses every year, two seasons, four eclipses, and we're here and we're fine and we've survived and the world goes on and things move forward and things progress and change,
Hmm.
right? And so we can look at those the eclipses as the catalyst, but we cannot be afraid of them. We need to work with the catalytic energy.
This is so good. I mean, I think you've moved us from, I don't know if you read this story when you were a little kid, Chicken Little and the sky is falling down, Henny Penny and the to this, just to some really sort of action steps and some awarenesses that can help us navigate this time a little more
Mhm.
peacefully, you know.
Yeah, I want people to feel good. I want them to feel like they can understand that, astrology is the study of patterns and cycles. And the best thing that we can do is look back at previous patterns. And I will be the first one to say that I don't always think astrology predicts, it anticipates.
Mhm.
And there's a difference there because the events that will unfold will not be exactly as
Right,
we imagine or exactly the same. So we can't say for 100% certain that it is predictive, but we can say that it is anticipatory. So that means that we can constantly think ahead or be ahead of something. If, in the recent past, when I talked about Uranus and Gemini and it aligned with a lot of global and US conflict, then we can anticipate that there might be some form of conflict.
because
It
there's
doesn't mean,
concentricity. It's concentric more than it is an
yes,
act and an actual exact return to someplace.
yes, because we as a society, as beings, evolve and change and shift usually over time. So the things that we're talking about, 84 years ago are not exactly
Right.
the same things and that's a Uranus cycle. This is why I bring up 84. It's not exactly what we're talking about right now,
Right. But
you know?
it's echoes of it.
It is echoing and that's where we get the history repeats itself because we repeat the themes and the patterns,
Hmm.
but we don't always repeat the exact things that we've done. Sometimes we do, right? Sometimes the actions are the same,
That's why the saying,
but
it doesn't repeat, no, it doesn't repeat it. No, it doesn't, what is it? It doesn't repeat, it rhymes.
yes. Oh, I like that. It's 100% true. We are rhyming with a time
Yeah.
that we've lived in before. So, I want people to feel not disenfranchised by astrology, but empowered knowing that they can anticipate, that they can sit back and look and go, okay, last time this happened, even in my own life, right?
Hmm.
I think back to I got during the last Pisces Virgo eclipse, I got engaged,
Hmm.
right? So it was a really good time, and I traveled a lot, and it was a really good time of union in my partnership. So my anticipation would then be during this current eclipse cycle
That
or
it would
time
be
that
good again. Yes.
or something around my partnership. Like, is there a stronger commitment in my
Right.
partnership? What are we doing? We traveled again, during some of the eclipse of this current cycle, and it's funny, we sold our home, and that was a commitment that we made to each other to become more flexible,
Hmm.
which was, especially given the political climate, we wanted to be able to know that, we had flexibility. But it was important for us to do that. So it was another recommitment, just wasn't exactly the same
Right.
way,
Right.
you know?
Yep.
So, you can look at previous cycles that we've existed. And I think I mentioned the years. So previously, the eclipses in Virgo and Pisces more, I guess, more in like the last 20 years were 2006, 2007, and 2015 to 2017, early 2017. So like March. So, you can reflect on your own life in those years. Are similar themes coming up now? Listeners, yourself, and then what's different about that time? Is it the themes or is it the actions
Hmm.
that I need to take?
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
That's good because I mean, that's really empowering. I
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's so easy for people to become afraid of astrology
Hmm.
or tarot or the esoteric because there's a not knowing.
Hmm.
And I think we're afraid of the unknown. I think the gift that Pisces gives us right now is to put trust in the unknown,
Yeah.
right? It's to say that we are the creators of our own dreams and destinies and purposes, that we can't let anyone ever take that away from us.
Right.
And, just because it is uncertain doesn't mean it's bad. I think we need to step away from this idea of when things lack solidification or stability, that they're negative.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because when things are malleable, you can mold and make
Mold them
them
how you want them. Yeah.
however you want them to be.
Yeah.
And no, I think currently Saturn has just moved back into the sign of Pisces. It was in Aries briefly this summer. And it will finish up this transit in Pisces. It will move back into Aries in February of 2026. What it has taught us since 2023, when it first entered Pisces, was that structures are flexible
Hmm.
and that we are meant to mold and recreate and not have anything stay exactly the same as it has been forever.
Well, somebody needs to tip off the Supreme Court on that one.
Please, I know. I know. Well, and this is the problem is that when you start turning on your people are going to start turning on you.
That's right.
And talk about anticipatory and cycles, that has historically happened every single time. So if you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, what is happening in this country? What is happening in this world? I'm so scared." Just know at some point the power dynamic is
Going to
going, it's
shift.
going to shift. It has historically always happened,
Hmm.
and it will happen again.
Hmm. Good. Anthony, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This has been so, I mean, it's just I like having you come on at times like these because you give us hope, you make us feel empowered, and you show us that astrology is a tool that is helpful and
Yes.
benevolent, really, in terms of just
Yeah.
apprising us of what's been and what's coming, and that we
Mhm.
can use it to our best advantage by knowing about it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great.
Oh my God, you're so welcome. Anytime. I love being here. I love being able to talk about things that I'm passionate about, and interweaving, especially history into, in like current political times into, astrological, I guess, transits, because I think it helps people feel a bit more, I would hope, a bit more grounded
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
That, it's always about the macro and the micro. And we always say as above, so below, as
Yep.
within, so without. And this is a good example, particularly of that.
Absolutely. Well, it's great. Well, I'm
Mhm.
going to have you back early in the new year if you come.
Okay,
All
of
right.
course.
And we will just be doing this on the regular because you're
Yeah.
really a huge gift to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I adore you so much.
Well, it's mutual. It's mutual. Thank you guys for watching, and I will have Anthony's information in the show notes. And so please, feel free to. I've had a reading with Anthony. He's amazing. So we've seen that this is for the culture writ large, but he's very good at telling you what is coming in for you and what's been in for you in your personal life. So, you know,
Yeah, and I was going to say too, if you do want to work with me in any capacity, I am teaching a workshop in early November. I think November, or excuse me, October 9th is the date.
overnight.
And yep, and there will be a recording. So if you miss it, you'll get a recorded version. But that workshop is all about eclipses or nodes and how like kind of eclipses play into the nodes, but then also the nodes in your own chart. So we spent a lot of time here talking a little bit about the energy in the collective. This will be a bit more personal for you and like how you can move through that in your own life.
Perfect. Well, send me the link for the class and all that information, and I'll put all that in the show
Cool.
notes. All right,
Great.
everybody. I will see you. What's today? I don't even know. Thursday. I guess I'll see everybody tomorrow. So thank you so much.